have the pleasure to have our speaker, Ed Kless, that will give us a presentation around creating a shared vision for your business. Ed joined Sage in July of 2003 and is currently the Senior Director of Partner Development and Strategy. He is also the author of The Soul of Enterprise, a book based on his Voice America talk show. And some of you will actually have the chance to win a copy and will be notified via email later on. If you want to learn more about Ed, you can also go to his website, edkless.com. And before I turn it over to Ed, I just wanted to say that we will take questions via the chat, and we'll take the time to answer some of them at the end of the presentation. If for some reason you are not able to ask us questions, we will also give you a chance to do that via email when you will receive the recording via confirmation email. So now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Ed.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to talk about this great subject to all of you out there today. I'm very passionate about this material. It's something that was shared with me a long, long time ago. Coincidentally, and I'll mention this right outright, one of the people who talked to me was recently, about this topic, was recently just elected the governor of North Dakota, which is kind of crazy, but I now know the governor of North Dakota. His name is Doug Burgum, and he's one of the people who I'll mention in this webcast was a great influence on my career around this topic. So anyway, wanted to jump in. To me, having a vision is absolutely critical to the success of any organization, but especially in a small organization. And let me just say outright that it's not necessarily what the shared vision is, it's what the shared vision does. And that will be the theme throughout what I'm going to talk about this morning. It's not what the shared vision is, it's what the shared vision does. And I'll come back and harp on that a couple times as we move through the material. The first thing I want to share with you, though, is this little chart. I was asked probably 7 or 8 years ago by a Sage partner that I was working with, hey, what's the 3 most important things that you've ever learned? I thought that was a really interesting question. And this was one of them, and ever since I've been asked that question and come up with this answer, I like to talk about this wherever I can, and I think it's extraordinarily relevant to what we have to talk about today. This is a summary chart of a book by Peter Block, B-L-O-C-K, and the name of the book is The Answer to How is Yes. The Answer to How is Yes. Fantastic book. And what Block posits in this book is really, really interesting. He says, there are only 6 questions that we really talk about in business. There's 6 conversations. How do you do it? How long will it take? How much does it cost? How do you get those people to change? How do you measure it? And how have other people done it successfully? Because these are really the only 6 questions that we ever talk about internally at business meetings. Now, certainly the it changes from industry to industry, from organization to organization, from maybe department to department. So that's fine. The subject changes, but the nature of the conversations don't change all that much. And one of the things that Block points out in this book is he says, look, these how-based questions, these are good questions. There's nothing inherently wrong or evil about any of these questions. But what he does say is that these questions tend to block change from occurring. And what does he mean by that? Well, he says, and the reason why these questions block change is because they are defense mechanisms against change. He says, these are the questions that people ask in meetings when they don't actually want to change. So they jump to the extraordinarily practical, right? Oh yeah, you want to do that? Well, how long is that going to take, right? Or how much is that going to cost? And it's practical. It sounds like a very intelligent question, and oftentimes the people who ask these questions in meetings are perceived as being very intelligent because they're asking these questions. But in a way, what they do is they block the possibility of a future that is different from the past, because we're now stuck in this conversation about what the current reality is and not focused on what the future is. Now, he says these are defense mechanisms against change. So innately, as human beings, we do this. It's not like people sit around in their cubicles or at the board meetings, you know, like Mr. Burns in The Simpsons, saying, you know, how can I ask this question so that it will block change in my organization? That's not what we do. This is just the natural occurrence. It says all of us do this. All of us tend toward this practical when we don't want to potentially change. And Block just simply says this: now that we know that, now that we know that these are the 6 conversations that we talk about, are there better questions that we can substitute that would allow us to peer into the future and would encourage conversations that are helping create a distinct future that is different from the past? And then he posits what he calls the what matters questions, or yes questions, right? That the book is the answer to how is yes. But I'll call them what matters. So can we make this shift from talking constantly about the eminently practical to thinking more about the future, right? Let me just give a quick example of how this blocks change, though. Let's take the one that I used earlier. How long will this take? Think about that. When somebody asks that in a meeting, oh yeah, how long is this going to take for us to implement, right? It doesn't matter what the answer is. The person who asked the question can always dispute the answer. So how long is this going to take, Fred? Well, it's going to probably take 3 months. Huh, that's way too long. Or, that's way too short, Fred. There's no way we could get it done in 3 months, right? So it doesn't matter what the answer is to the person, because you can always dispute it, right? So it's very interesting that these questions are really, in a way, a setup for not allowing new things to occur. So today, as we examine this idea of shared vision in an organization, what I want to help you focus on is that one of the questions that we're going to talk about today is, what do we want to create? And the we here, of course, is you and your organization. What is it that we, as collectively, as a group, even if you are a solo practitioner, right? What do we want to create? What is that future that's different from the past that we envision today? And we're not going to talk about how we're going to do it, or how other people have done this successfully. That's the reference question, right? How have other people done this successfully? And the danger in that question is that if you think about that, if you think about spending time on answering the question, how have other people done it successfully, what you've done is you've created a question in which no innovation can take place, right? Because if we're only going to do something because other people have done it successfully already, then we can't innovate and do something new. So Uber doesn't exist, right? Airbnb doesn't exist, you know, and the iPhone doesn't exist, right? Because all of these things were not done successfully in the past. So when we focus on that question, we're really in trouble, right? Because we're blocking any possible innovation. So that's why we're going to focus on this question of what is it that we as an organization want to create. And ultimately, that is the one question that leads us to a conversation about shared vision. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about a framework that you can use in your organization to organize yourself around the creation of shared vision, and then how it plays into the rest of your organization, and then ultimately get to some very practical questions. And in order to do that, we have to first look at this. So this is an actual copy or a picture of a book that I stole from my father when I was in college, of In Search for Excellence. This was the original fad business management book by Tom Peters and Robert Waterman. It's now Tom Peters, right? And in this book, they talked about this McKinsey 7S framework. So both Peters and Waterman were consultants at McKinsey out of their Chicago office, and they developed this framework that they started to see over and over again inside organizations, and that's what they call this the 7S framework. And you see a picture of this on the right-hand side of your screen here, and this is it's known in the organizational development industry as the page 10 model because it appears on page 10 of this book. So if you go out and you buy a new copy of this book, it's still going to be on page 10. They can't move it to a different page because everybody will freak out. So it's the page 10 model, and they called it the happy atom. You can see that it looks a little bit like an atom drawing that we used to look at in chemistry class, right? We had this nucleus and things rolling around it. But they actually had a very interesting analogy for this. They said these are 7 lenses through which you can view your organization. And they said, think about it like the bottom of a microscope. Right? Going back to chemistry class again, where you change the different power of magnification, 10, 20, 30, and then you might also put red and blue filters in, and you saw different things emerge when you looked at the onion skin or your blood cells at these different powers of that magnification. It looked completely different when you get much, much closer in. And they said these are just 7 different ways that you can look at your organization, and they gave no preeminence to any one of these 7 things. They were all given equal weight in the system, right? But then along comes this guy, and he was also a consultant out of the Chicago office, and he modified the 7S model. He said, well, I think that there's a great model, but we need to give some preeminence to some of these. And what he did was he changed the name of shared values, and he changed it to shared vision. Right? And he made it a little bit more all-encompassing. He added some other elements to the thing that was just the shared values and called it shared vision. And then he put it in an order. He said, first we have to look at what our shared vision is. Then we can progress along to strategy in the organization. And then once we have the strategy, then we can, who is our staff? Who are the people in place? And of course our people then have skills, style, structure, and systems, right, that are associated with them, and that's how the people are organized. And I think what's pretty interesting about this is if we go back and if I draw a vertical line on this slide down right probably through the middle of the strategy bubble on this, you can see a clear echo back to the how versus what matters stuff. After all, those how questions are very, very systems related. Right? How are we going to do this? How long is it going to take? How much does it cost? How do we get other people to change? Right? So that you can see that all of those how questions are over on the right-hand side of this model. And the question of what do we want to create, which is that shared vision question, is over on the left. And the person who led me through the creation of this model, or when I was working putting this in place in my organization, had a mantra. He always said to me, Ed, look left, look left, look left on the model. And what he meant was, is if you are struggling with day-to-day operations, with systems that you have in place and getting them to stick inside the organization, if you're struggling with having things adopted by the staff, by the people on your team, if there's pushback on that, he says very often the place to look is not on the right-hand side of the model, but actually left. He says because you haven't fully asked and answered the questions over on the left, because if you did, the stuff on the right is easy or relatively easy because you have a framework for deciding, making a decision on what we should and shouldn't do. So this look left. By the way, and I alluded to this earlier, the guy who modified this model is a guy by the name of Doug Burgum, and you can Google him, B-U-R-G-U-M. He was elected the governor of North Dakota 2 days ago. And he is the one who taught me this adapted model. So I would be curious as to see if he's going to put this in place in the state of North Dakota. So would not be surprised because he's a really, really bright guy. Anyway, what we're going to talk about the rest of our time together is this notion of shared vision, right? We're going to leave all of this other stuff for perhaps future conversations that we can have as part of a series. So I'll leave that up to Romu and his team to bring that up. But we're going to talk about shared vision today. We're going to talk about this bubble, and we're going to break this apart and really look at the details. But I wanted to give you the whole framework, the whole look at what this process is about. So we're staying over here at shared vision. Now, that said, I'm going to take the opportunity to mention that if you do want to ask a question, please go to the chat window at any point in our conversation today and start putting in chats. Romu is monitoring that for us, so at any point you can ask a question. So if I've confused you already, which is very possible, and you'd like to get unconfused, please go ahead and put in questions. So I just want to make sure, so far so good, everybody's doing well. And if this is not what you expected, that's okay too. You know, we're not going to hold it against you if you decide to leave at this point in the presentation. All right, but if you think, yep, hey, this is interesting, I'd like to continue, we want you along with the ride. Okay, so just want to say that that's fair game at this point. All right, so here we go. We're going to take our dive now fully into shared vision. All right, there are 3 shared vision fundamentals, 3 building blocks that make up this thing that is shared vision. And it's often referred to as values, mission, vision, right? And there's some other names for these things as well. So I just want to talk a little bit about them, because you will see some of these things echoed in different literature. So I'm going to talk about them in terms of values, right? But other people in organizational development teams call them things like core beliefs or shared values, but I'm just going to refer to them as values. Core beliefs, by the way, is the term that Jim Collins uses in his work, including Good to Great and Built to Last. So he talks about these things as core beliefs, but it's the same thing as what I'm talking about here under values. There seems to be some common agreement around the word mission. For 10 years, there was a movement to begin to call this purpose, but we seem to have migrated back to the word vision. Or mission. I'm sorry. We've gone back to this idea of mission, which I guess it's one of these things that it's a trend over time. So, but if you do hear anybody talking about what is the purpose of your organization, a purpose statement, that is also an equation of mission statement as well, right? And then this last one probably has the most disparate number of names for them. We have this vision statement, right, or vision, also known as the aspiration statement, or what Jim Collins again calls your courageous goal, and he has another name for it, which I'll share with you later, but they're all this same thing, right? So we have values, mission, and vision. All right, so those are the terms that I'm going to stick with now as we walk through each of these in turn, right? So values, mission, and vision. So let's talk about the values, right? What are the values? The values are that they are the founding beliefs of your company, and they answer this question: what do we as a group collectively believe in? What are the things that we believe in as a group? That rarely will these change. Well, why? Because, for example, a common thread around values is something like honesty. Right, so you're not going to say, well, we're honest now, but we decided to be dishonest from here on in. Right, there's rarely do we make some kind of a pivot around the notion of what our values as an organization are. They can change. We can get some clarification around them, but rarely do these things change. Once they're put in place, it's something that moves forward, despite the changes in personnel in the organization. Right, so what do we collectively believe in? In many cases, you'll see that it's between 4 and 8 words or statements, right? So that sometimes organizations decide to adopt these as just words, like honesty, integrity, and I'm going to give you some examples in just a few minutes. Or sometimes they elaborate on them, and there might be 8 statements. Now, don't get hung up, by the way, on this between 4 and 8. If you only got 3, it's okay. It's going to be all right. And if you have 9, don't freak out. what we don't want is 27, right? So this is just meant as a guidepost that you're going to end up with these between 4 and 8 of these things that we call our values. And then this last bullet is an interesting one, and there's a debate in organization development circles around whether values is something that are just kept internal to the organization, or are they something that might be shared outside the organization? In other words, do you put it on the website? And the debate in here is fascinating. The folks who call for internal only have 2 reasons for it. One, they call for internal only because they're afraid that if they put their values out there, that people could potentially use the values to manipulate them, right? If they knew what their values were, they could be manipulated. I don't find that very convincing an argument. But the second one is a really interesting argument. This is the keep them internal argument. They say that what we want to keep these internal because we do not want them to become a tool of the marketing department. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have, to say that, hey, listen, we don't want this to become spin. We don't want this to become, well, here's what we want to put to the outside world to try to convince people that, hey, this is what we're really about, even though we're not, right? And I think that is to me is a much more interesting argument. Now, my argument against that, and I fall down, you can say, I clearly fall down on the, hey, let's share these from an external perspective as well. But the argument against that is, well, that's true, but you should have control over whether or not they become a marketing tool inside the organization, right? You should be able to say, hey, listen, no, let's rein this in, right? So it's more about what are us than it is about trying to convince somebody that we're something different. Okay, so let's take a look now at some examples of shared values, right? Or values, I'm sorry. And the first one that I'm going to share with you is these are SAGEs. These are the ones that are have been developed and are used at Sage. These are, in fact, on our website. So it's customers first, velocity, do the right thing, innovate, and make a difference, right? So these, you can see these are 5 statements, phrases that we use. Some of them just happen to be words, right? So customers first, velocity, do the right thing, innovate, make a difference. Here are some other examples, and I just pulled these from different meetings that I've had, sessions that I've had with people that I've helped develop their shared vision and strategy. And so just some examples. Ensure quality of life balance, right? Acting integrity, truthfulness, openness, communication. Work collaboratively as a team. Have raving fans for customers. You notice that there's a common thread. This is like motherhood apple pie, right? There's nothing earth-shaking about any of these statements that make you go, huh, that's like, never would have guessed that this would be something that was on anybody's radar, that an organization would want to behave this way, right? Oh, raving fans for customers, whew, that's new, right? It's not, and that's, let me harp back on the thing I opened up with, it's not what the shared vision is, it's what the shared vision does, right? It's do you, once these are developed, use them inside your organization as decision-making tools. And this is true, by the way, not only for values, but also for mission and vision, but I'm going to talk about it here because it rings true throughout the entirety of the presentation. What we want to have happen inside an organization is we want people, when they're making a decision about compensation plans, right? Salesperson compensation. We want them to say, okay, is this compensation system that we've just developed here, is it in alignment with our value of ensuring quality of life balance, right? And that's what we want to hear. We want those conversations to be reflected on a day in, day out basis inside the organization. My mentor I mentioned earlier, he said Doug Burgum said to me once, he said, Ed, are your people in your company, are they sick and tired of hearing you talk about values, mission, and vision. And I said, no, they're not sick of hearing. I'm sick of me saying it. Yes, I'm sick of me saying it, but they're not sick of it. He says, then you're only halfway there. He says, what you want is you want people so sick, they're like, yes, Ed, we got it. Please, let's not talk about this anymore, right? He says, until you hear that, or until you hear them talking about it without you jumping in to add it, he says, you still need to talk about it, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for people to use these words in decisions that they make all throughout the day, all throughout the week. Whenever they're making a decision, they should want to relate this back to something that's in your shared vision. Okay, so that, again, it's not what the vision is, the shared vision is, it's what the shared vision does, and that's the example of this. Let me share with you another thing the way that this is implemented and ingrained in the organization. And that is to say that if you do have a performance review type system where we're reviewing people's performance, I don't suggest annually, but that's a whole different conversation. If you are reviewing people's performance, one of the things that you should tie back in to the review process is to tie back and say, hey, does everyone in the organization live up to these things, to these values? Do they put customers first? And how? Give me an example of how they put customers first, right? So those would be examples of it. Okay. I think there's somebody saying that they're still having some trouble with the audio. I hope that that's something that we can get rectified here. I hope it's not something on my end. But, and yes, we are recording this. So let me just answer that question. Thank you, Tom, for asking. We are recording this. The recording will be made available to those of you who participate in this. Okay, so let's begin on to the next topic here. Let's talk a little bit about mission now, right? The mission is a statement, sometimes referred to as mission statement. I've just shortened it to mission. That seems to be the latest and greatest way of talking about this. And it's composed of three parts. It's one sentence that's composed of three parts. What do we do? Who benefits from what we do? And then there's this optional, how do we do it, right? How actually do we do it? So what do we do? Who benefits from what we do? And then how do we do it? It answers this question too, which and this was always my acid test for are we developing a good good mission statement, is when it answers this question for everyone in the organization. Why did I come to work today? Right? And it should do that for everyone. It should do that for someone who is sitting at a front desk, managing the conference rooms. It should be that for the person who is writing code. It should be that for the person who is on the lead sales team. Everyone should answer the question, why did I come to work today, inside the organization the same way, and that's your mission. It should be something that's easy to memorize, and therefore let me say this, it should also be something that everyone has memorized, right? People need to be able to just be asked, hey, what's the mission statement? And they should be able to say, our mission is this, right? So it's not just something that is, you print it up once, put it on the back of your business card and you forget about, or you put it over, in your reception area for your customers to see, but you don't know what it is inside the organization. Right, so it's something that is living and breathing inside the organization. My suggestion is that every meeting that you have in your organization, where you have a PowerPoint presentation, the first slide should be your mission statement. And then we actually ask this question: does this meeting help us fulfill that mission? And if it doesn't, we probably shouldn't have the meeting. Right? If this meeting isn't getting us to that, is not fulfilling that, then there's no reason for us to have this meeting. Right? So if you do anything outside the organization, such as a sales presentation, right? The first thing that you should talk about is put your mission statement up on the board and say, this is why we exist, right? And we'll see why that might be in just a second. And then now this one, just to distinguish this a little bit from values, this one can sometimes change, right? You will see the mission statement occasionally change in an organization, and I think that's a healthy thing. I think sometimes organizations get way too focused on, well, this is our mission and it's always been so. I don't necessarily think that's a really good thing, right? So the mission statement can change. We can refine it a little bit more, right? And now let's take a look at some examples of this, right? To champion small and medium businesses, and the business builders that grow them. So this is stages. So again, you know, we're eating our own dog food here. So what is it that we do? We champion small and medium businesses. So that's, and who do we do, right? Who benefits? The business builders that grow them, right? So you can see that. This is the mission statement of an organization that I was a partner in about 20 years ago. To improve the business success of our clients by providing superior business systems. So there you can clearly see, and I've broken out the three components, right? What do? We improve business success. Who benefits from what we do? Our clients. How do we do it? By providing superior business systems. And notice in previous I said that sometimes the how, is usually a by clause or a through clause. That's an optional thing. You don't have to have that. And then here's another one, improving the success of our team, our clients, and our partners, right? So these are very, again, succinct statements, stuff that can be memorized, right? And again, can and should be memorized. And this is, again, things will change about this. So it's usually an infinitive, like you say, you know, to champion, to improve, and then I just have improving, but it could have been to improve the success of our team, our clients, and our partners. But oftentimes recommended that this is some kind of, it's a verb statement. It's an action word that is happening, because it's a mission, right? It's something that we're actively pursuing. What is it that we're trying to do? And again, the best suggestion that I can make is that this is something that is talked about on a daily basis inside the organization. You know, are we doing this? And let me, I'll just test this out at you, right? To champion small and medium businesses and the business builders that grow them. I am an employee of Sage. I hope I'm doing that right now. I mean, this very presentation is all about, as far as I'm concerned, championing and mentoring you guys on the end of this call, on the other end of this call, to help you get better at what you do, right? So the answer is yes. I came to work today to do this. I came to work today to champion and mentor medium business and the business builders that grow them. So absolutely. By the way, before this presentation, I was no kidding, in the room right across from me. It's you know, 5 feet away, and I work on the Sage Accounting Solutions team, and we've been talking all day about accountants. So the business builders that grow them, right? So yes, I came to work today, and I'm doing this absolutely, right? All right, so again, just giving the quick opportunity, we've got about 25 minutes left. I have reserved about 10 minutes for full questions at the end, but just want to iterate that if you have any questions regarding clarity, if I've confused you in any way, please go ahead and type questions into the chat. It might be helpful for me too, because one of the worst things about doing any presentation like this over the phone is I see that there are a number of you out here. So far, almost all of you have stayed, which is great. If some of you wouldn't mind going to the chat and saying hi, or yes, this is going well for you, that's helpful for me from a feedback position. So I just throw that out there, asking you for just a little bit of feedback, saying, hey, this is good. We want to continue to hear this. I'm moving on regardless. So, all right, here we go. Next up, and this might be one of the most, to me, this is really interesting. This notion of a vision. Again, Jim Collins calls it courageous goal in his work, and Built to Last and Good to Great. But he also has another name for it, and we're going to, oh, thank you, Troy. Troy's enjoying the webinar. Where he also calls it a BHAG, a BHAG. And this is an acronym, and it stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. I always found that terminology interesting. Big, hairy, audacious goal, as opposed to, I suppose, the short, bald, and timid. I don't know. So we want our goal to be short, bald, and timid. But yes, big, hairy, audacious goal. This one is another thing. We're looking for clarity and conciseness with almost zero room for interpretation. I'm going to show you one as an example that is absolutely the best example of this I have ever seen. It's 2 words, right? This courageous goal is 2 words. When I show it to you, you will immediately know the company, right, by these 2 words, and you will also know that they actually achieved it. So it's the greatest example of it, but that's coming up in just a little bit. This is one that should take 3 to 5 years to achieve. The consensus around length of time for a vision statement is 3 to 5 years. Ordinarily, we don't want it so far out there so that it's 30 to 50 years out there, because that doesn't help today so much. There are very few people who are going to be part of the organization 30 years from now. I mean, unless you're running a cemetery, then maybe that's a 30-year goal. But for people in business, we want to have a time horizon that many people can be a part of. It's shortening, by the way. It's shortening. This used to be, when I first started teaching this about 10 years ago, it was 5 to 10. It's now down to 3 to 5, and I think that's due to the gig economy and more and more people who are getting positions, taking them, moving on 18 months or so afterwards. So I think it's a direct reflection of what's happening in the world at large. So it should take 3 to 5, and it should be difficult and daring, right? I guess that's the audacious part of it, right? Not timid. It should be something that says, hey, this is some tough stuff. This is not going to be easy for us. It should be something that's aligned with your purpose and principles and your mission and vision. I'm sorry, and change that. And again, and this is, I think, a key, it should change when you achieve it. When it's achieved, it should be changed. The organization that I was a part of, I mentioned earlier, right? I left that organization after we had achieved our first courageous goal, our first vision statement. We achieved it, and we made the mistake of not resetting it. And when we didn't reset it, I got very bored. And I ended up leaving and selling my interest in the organization because the partners could not agree on the next courageous goal, the next vision. And I got bored. And it was the major reason why I left the organization, because there was no vision, and I didn't like being a part of it. There's a quote from Scripture, I believe it's Psalms, that says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." I'm sure that Confucius and Buddha said something similar. All of these are, but where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think that's very true. There's also a debate about qualitative versus quantitative vision statements. I'm going to give you an example of both. I don't take a position on this. Most of the time when I've helped organizations create vision statements, they are qualitative in nature, but I have no opposition to quantitative. And again, I'll give you an example of this in just a little bit. All right. Before I give you some examples, though, I want to show you a little test that, and this is the work of Jim Collins, that he came up with that said there's a test to see if your courageous goal is a valid one. And what he suggests is that you throw it through this prism of looking at 3 different questions, and if the answer is yes to all 3, or included in this little Venn diagram, then it is your BHAG. Then it can be something that is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And here are the 3 questions. Is it something that you are deeply passionate about, right? It's got to be something that you have to be passionate about. And when I say you here, I'm talking about the organization has to be passionate about it, not just one person, but the organization has to be passionate about it. Is it something that you could possibly be best in the world at, or best in class, or and world here is intended to be far-reaching, right? Maybe it's not the entire world, but it is not intended to be, can we be the best in a particular city, right? It really is something beyond that, right? So can we be the best in the world at it? Now, and can you, not are you, but can you? And then lastly, what drives your economic engine? Does it drive your economic engine? Is it something that you can ultimately make money doing? Or if you're a not-for-profit organization, that's okay too. But driving your economic engine means to not-for-profits, can it raise money, right? I have a friend of mine, she just told me this story a couple weeks ago, and it's hysterical because she does website design, and she was asked to do a website for a local charity in Dallas. Ready for this? It's people helping people help parrots. Okay. It's not people helping parrots. No, we're not helping the parrots directly. This is an indirect play. This is so we're people who help the people who help parrots. Now, and I thought of this because it was a great example. I said, well, good luck fundraising on that one, right? I mean, like there may be people who are passionate about parrots, and you can get people to donate, but I don't know if you can get people to donate who are help anyway. But you see my point. Right, is that we have to make sure that it's going to be driving the economic engine. Now, what I think is neat about this is I've seen a ton of people fall into the Venn diagram where there's 2 circles but not 3. In other words, it might be something that they could be best in the world at, and it's something that they're passionate about, but it doesn't drive their economic engine, right? And to me, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'm moving my pointer over it, this circle here, that's a hobby, right? You're passionate about it, you can be very good at it, but it's not going to drive your economic engine. In fact, you probably lose money. Like your boat, right, is negative on your economic engine, right? That it sucks money from you. But then there's this other one too, right? You're passionate about it, it drives your economic engine, but you can't be best in the world at it, right? And I equate that's sort of like a gold rush. That might be something that temporarily you can get involved in, but long-term is not going to give you some success, right? If there's gold in them there hills, yeah, you can be passionate about gold, you're going to make money doing it, but you don't have to be very good at it because it's just something that you just go do, right? So, but usually I found those things to be temporary. Now, that's it's also the most unusual one. Here's the most common one, and this makes me profoundly sad, is I find that so many people are stuck in this one. It's something that they can be best in the world at, it's something that drives their economic engine, but they either don't have passion for it or lost their passion for it. And to me, that's very sad. I think that people who are in this circle, this part down here, this is the black hole of life. I mean, this is the thing that sucks the life out of people, is when they are good at something, they make money, but they've lost passion for it or don't have passion for it. So the real test for your organization is, can you develop something that encompasses all 3 of those and is something that everyone is working towards, right? So that BHAG. So now on to my examples of this. Right? Here's, again, SAGES, energizing business builders around the world through the imagination of our people and the power of our technology. Okay, so that's our BHAG, and that's our vision. Here's the one I was talking about earlier. You know what company this is, right? 2 words, crush Adidas. And of course, that's Nike. And they did. And they absolutely did. Now, I think Adidas is catching up, is doing some good work, but they absolutely crushed them, right? And to me, it is the best example of a vision statement put forward, because it's clear, concise, little room for interpretation. It inspired almost a generation of people who worked for the company at Nike, and they certainly did. This third one is an interesting one. This computer on every desk and on every home was Microsoft's. Now, this was Microsoft's. They have since changed it, but when they developed this, it was actually a little bit of variation. It was in 1978, I believe. A computer and on every desk and on every home. That was what they had developed then. And everybody was like, yeah, Bill, that's a little bit crazy. Not gonna happen. Well, obviously we know what did happen, but I use this as an example of where this sometimes changes. In 1984, Microsoft changed their vision statement, and they added 3 words to the end of this: a computer on every desk and in every home. And they added 3 words to it, and they added 3 words as a direct result of the most famous Super Bowl commercial in history, and that was the 1984 Apple commercial, where I don't know if you remember this woman who ran in. It was the Big Brother commercial. She came in with this big thing, and she swung this hammer around and threw it through, and it broke through it broke through the Big Brother vision, and that commercial was developed by Apple was targeted not at Microsoft, but it was targeted at IBM. Right? They were the Big Brother. But Bill Gates saw this commercial and said, "We got a problem here. We need to correct this." And they changed their vision to a computer on every desk and in every home, running Microsoft software. Running Microsoft software. We just want to be clear, none of that Apple stuff. We're gonna put our stuff on there. And then this last example here is this idea of having one that's quantitative, right? So to increase revenue per employee, right? So that's to 25,000 by December of 2018, right? So that's a quantitative one. As I could say, that's not quite as inspirational as Crush Adidas, right? But it is clear and concise, little room for interpretation, and people understand it. So again, I don't have a bias against the notion of quantitative vision, right? So I think it's okay, but it has to be right for your particular company, because I think it's got to be in alignment with who and what you are. Let me just say, I've worked with a lot of professional firms, accounting firms, and they want to have something that they can touch and put a number on. And again, I got no problem with that. Okay. So we're right up here against the time, perfect timing, about 10 minutes to go. As mentioned earlier, if you like what you heard today, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have. So go ahead and type them into the chat box while I wrap up here. But if you just want to remain connected to me, the best way to do it is Twitter @EdKless. If you have a question for me that you don't want to ask in the public forum here, although I'm getting the questions only, I wouldn't mention your name. I might mention your first name. But you can send me ed.kless@sage.com. As Romu mentioned earlier, I've got the soulofenterprise.com is the website. My partner Ron Baker and I, who you see in the little picture there, we do this fun radio show. By the way, I had the best job at Chase. Who gets to do a radio show as part of their job? So I'm happy to refer you to that site. And with the 5 of you, 5 of them are going to get a copy of the book, right? So. Yep, so awesome. So thanks for being here today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that this is something that resonated with you. And again, if there are any questions that you might have regarding this, I'm happy to take them. I guess we can open up the lines too. Oh, okay, we've got a question from Troy, thanks. Is there a size of enterprise where you see these principles being successful? Yes, and it's very easy for me to answer that question, Troy, all. I've seen this successful, and I'm not kidding, in a 2-person organization, and I think it was really a 1-person organization who happened to have somebody who is they're working with a spouse, right? And they created a vision for the organization. I think that taking yourself through and answering these questions is helpful regardless of the size. I purposefully showed you sages because I wanted to show you that this works in a large 30,000 employee company, right? So yes, this definitely works. So yeah, Troy, I think even in very small enterprises, this absolutely works. As far as sometimes I get questions. Well, how do you go about doing this? And what you do is take my presentation, talk about it inside your organization, and begin to answer the questions, right? I've given you the questions that you have to answer, right? What do we want to create together? You know, who benefits from what we do, why benefits, all of the BHAG stuff, it's all in the presentation. It's just a matter of organizing your thoughts around answering those questions, right? So yes, I think that this is something that can be used almost at any level. One of the places where I'm seeing a lot of interest in this, by the way, is in the quote-unquote virtual or gig type organizations. In other words, the organizations that have a core team, but then they farm out and bring in different people temporarily. You know, they might be either subcontractors or maybe even temporary full-time workers that are coming in. And I'm seeing a lot of interest around those type organizations. And what's fascinating about that is it really gives people a great framework for bringing new people into the organization and getting them up to speed very quickly on who it is we are, why it is we do what we do. So I think the gig economy is ripe for more and more conversations like this because the organizations are more of a transient nature. We have to get up to speed a lot quicker. We can't rely on, well, come into our organization and after 2 years you'll get it, right? Because after 2 years you might be gone, right? In that gig economy. So interesting stuff. Thank you for your question, though, Troy. Really appreciate that. All right. Anything else? I think we're doing good.
All right. Thank you so much, Ed. Thanks again to all of you guys for attending, and thanks, Ed, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. Again, you will be receiving an email including the recording of this webcast, and I know some of you might have had some sound difficulty, so this would be included in the email you will receive in the upcoming days. The second webcast of this series will be in December. We'll have the pleasure to have Ed once again. So please be on the lookout for the invite. And that's it for today. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you in December.